Hello and welcome to our first ever edition of Coffee with Cre8ives. I'm Carl Gibson of Creative Things, and the focus of this series is going to be basically bringing answers to questions that as a young professional or a student in architecture and design you might be having about starting your career or continuing your career, building your career, even things as much as how do professionals find inspiration. We're going to be looking at some projects that have been at least brought to the conceptual phase, if not to the fully constructed phase. And from there, we're actually going to have those professionals talk to us about how they got there. And along the way, we'll be answering some questions that you, the audience, have submitted. So thank you for joining us. This is pretty exciting. For me, it's pretty exciting for our first guest as well. He's very enthusiastic about joining us. And to tell you a little bit about Mr. Chester Ehrig, I joined the Ehrig fan club when we started working together at KSQ, and you'll see in that thumbnail picture that he is in his typical business attire, with the Hawaiian shirt, the pin sticking out of his mouth, and the crazy look on his face. That is a typical Chester appearance in the studio. So what I think what you'll find today is that is your very charismatic designer kind of feel. We just lost Chester, so we get to try getting him on. Of course, it's a live stream, so why not have issues also? So let's get him back on. There you are. Hey, buddy. All right, let's get this over here and let's see how things are going. Hey, Chester, how are you doing?
Great, and you?
I'm doing pretty good. We have to get to the first question. The first question, okay?
Okay.
Which, because of the title of this series, is what you drinking?
What you drinking? Club soda and cranberry juice.
Is that your typical morning routine?
No, this is something new.
Okay. What's
This is something.
do you have a special cup or mug that you're using today?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. This thing is unbelievable. It's the Corksicle. The ice lasts forever. So there's a plug for Corksicle.
Not a sponsor.
That's right.
I've got so despite the fact that I created the title Coffee with Cre8ives, I don't drink coffee. I've
Neither
never
do I.
I've never found but hey, let's do stereotypes and make that a thing, right? So
Yes, it says it all. You want to go out for coffee? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure.
exactly. So I'm actually drinking hot chocolate, which I don't know if you recall, kind of was my morning routine.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Especially in the colder days. And I've actually got, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I do have a special mug. It's
Oh
my
yeah.
dad's ceramic
Yeah.
mug that my oldest son made for me a long time ago. Man, I've had this thing for quite some time. So we'll be sipping down on our hot chocolate and club soda and cranberry juice throughout the show. So anytime you feel like you've had too much red text in your script, feel free to take a sip. And if we get disconnected again, hey, that's live streaming for you. So we'll get reconnected as soon as we can. OBS is telling me that my internet is really crappy right now. So fortunately, I am recording this, so we'll be able to put it up because it seems like we might be having some streaming issues. We got a couple people watching. Hey, everybody who are watching. So I think we kind of just get into it. And I gave a brief bio about how we met and kind of what our relationship is professionally. We'll get into more of that later on, but give us a quick introduction. Who are you, Chester?
I'm an architect, designer, and that's all I've ever really been. That's what I wanted to be since I was in grade school. And I didn't know that it had a title to it. I just knew that designing buildings and designing things was what I wanted to do. And so it wasn't until I got to eighth grade in the high school, the junior high counselor getting me ready for high school, getting all of us ready for high school, asked, "What do you want to be?" And looked at the grade scores, and she said architect. And I go, she was really cute and really good looking. And she goes, "How about architect?" I go, "What's that?" You know?
Yeah,
She
you were
describes
too
it. I
too
go,
distracted
"That's it."
you were too distracted by the attractiveness of the counselor, right?
That's
What
it.
is architecture?
Wow. That means I'm going to be driving red Ferraris and dating, really beautiful chicks, and I will be an architect. Wow.
I'm pretty sure all the movie stars portrayed architects in movies back then, right? So you knew that that's exactly what an architect was: red Ferraris
That's
and
it.
big houses and
My test scores, proved, hey, hello. And she said, and the rest is history.
so. Well, you already answered kind of one of these first short answer questions. How did you get into architecture? Which essentially it sounds like you were just kind of the test scores said that's what you should be.
Well, actually, the first choice I had was to be a math teacher. I didn't like teaching. I didn't like to do that. And I go, no. She says, well, how about an art teacher? No, 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 no teaching.
She
So
really
then it
wanted.
was architect, the third choice, architect, because you use your, art and math. And those were my highest scores. So voila.
So so I guess she had a quota of teachers to recruit. So the
I
first
think
two
that's
options
what it
were
was.
yeah.
That she loved teaching. She loved teachers,
So
So
what is your background in terms of education for what you do as a profession?
Ah, I had the great privilege and opportunity to do it old school, and that was through mentorship. And I had to get a job. I had to start a life, and so I ended up getting a job for from an architect and for an architect in San Diego, and it ended up being the most fantastic God sent in the world. I mean, it was amazing. The guy was a phenomenal mentor before I even knew what a mentor was, and he's a brilliant guy and ended up being the best teachers teacher that I could ever asked for. And from that point, he set the foundation. So
Nice. Um, and that's something that we have in common because I also went through the apprenticeship program, um, having I don't know if you could say having been forced, but kind of getting to the point where I was more ready to have a family than I was to have an education. So fortunately, uh, through the strings that we call fate, I ended up in a state that allows apprenticeship for licensure, which turned out to be perfect for my career.
yeah,
So that's something that I think that maybe helped us. I don't know. Maybe that's why you took me under your wing and helped me grow. You saw something. So how long? So let's talk real quick. And this is really interesting because I just had this discussion with somebody on an architecture Discord server just yesterday. You said that you're an architect. Is that by title?
ah, this is very what do you call that, controversial issue.
Oh, you should have been there for the debate. It was great. It is very controversial.
Yeah, and The definition of architect currently has two definitions. One, and the first one, is that you actually are a licensed professional who designs buildings and projects, etc. The second one, you can be an architect if you are in software business, software design.
We'll just throw that one away. We won't be talking about that one.
I know, but I'm going to take a liberty, my friend. But in the truest sense, I do everything they do. The thing that's different, the thing that is the challenge is the piece of paper that says you've passed a test. And so as I've worked for different firms over the years, and that in each of those firms, I did the exact same duties, if not more, than my colleagues. And quite frankly, in all of those cases, that's how I got hired. Just for who I was and what I knew. And so I'm doing that as a rebel, you know, as someone from not obeying the 19th commandment or whatever.
Yeah, right. And, yeah. I know exactly
but
what you mean.
Go ahead.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. But I have a great deal of respect for that piece of paper. And if you're all in the profession and you want to be play this game, don't be like me. So, you know, from that regard, get the license. Just get the license, okay? Get the piece of paper over.
So,
but be cautious. Do not think that that light piece of paper is what makes you who you are.
Yes,
because
and
no, it does not.
I want to come back to that because I want to get your thoughts on the discussion that I had with someone yesterday on what exactly it is to be an architect. But to get back to so not education wise, let's say that I consider you an architect. Okay, you consider you an architect. You introduced yourself as an architect designer. So how long do you feel it took you to become an architect from what you consider yourself as an architect?
That's a tough question.
Was there a moment where you were just like, okay, I'm an architect now?
Yes and no. That's another toughie because there's the power of nuances. The first guy I worked for was M. Allen Keener there in San Diego. And I had no idea. I should have been called Chester Clueless because I had no freaking idea how much I didn't know and how much I knew, and I had no clue. So when that job came sadly to an end, I had to get a job a little bit later on with a renowned architectural firm in San Diego, one of the premier firms, Homer Delawee and Associates. They're now Delawee, Britton and Wilkes. But and I came there and I felt like a dumb little kid that didn't know anything and was desperate to have a job. And sorry for swearing. Anyway, so
it's that 4-letter word. You got to be careful with those.
I get into this firm that's, I mean, an top award-winning firm, and I show my work, nervous, sweaty palms, the whole 9 yards. And the guy goes, yeah, this is perfect. That's amazing. Great. And I would find out 6 months later that I was the highest paid guy in the back office. And I'm going, wow, everyone else here is a graduate and licensed. I'm still clueless, remember? I still haven't really caught on to who I am. All I know is by this standard, by them, who they are, they're kind of certifying that, hey, you're holding it, you're doing it. And I was getting some very, very, very nice projects. And I was working right next to the guy that hired me, who was a partner, John Brenton, who ended up has a reputation, the hardest guy in town, hardest man. But I still, Carl, didn't know. It
Sure.
took a while for it to seep in, and it would be a series of events like that would take place. And the thing came when I started to feel I can do anything. You give me a problem and I can solve it. That's the dawn. That's the deal. It's that you've acquired enough where you know I can I can solve the problem. Give me the challenge. In fact, bring it on.
And you walked into that office knowing 100% that you could solve those problems, right? Because
Not the first one or the second one.
and the reason I ask this is because there's a lot of people, especially who are students, who are very nervous about finding that first job. They don't think they're good enough. They're not sure what good enough is, and they don't really have a good metric. It's either that they don't trust people who are telling them what good enough is, or they don't understand what they're being told well enough to say, okay, that's what it is. And I don't know if it's academia or if it's a culture thing. I have seen this in multiple places, the US, UK, Asia. These people who are looking for their first jobs out of school or while they're still in school, an internship, they don't know what it takes to get that first job. And of course, as architects and designers, we like to scare them, right? We call it architorture in school. We tell them as an intern, what did you tell me at KSQ? We put an anklet on you and chain you to the desk, but it's wrapped in velvet, so it's the most comfortable anklet you'll ever have. Which I don't know, if KSQ was my first job, maybe I would have been a little apprehensive, but that's, I think, when I knew that you and I were going to get along just fine.
Yeah.
So my first job in architecture was completely, hey, I think I know how to draw. Here's some of my stuff. Can you use me? And I'll tell you what, walking into that office, I knew 100% of the stuff that I knew then, which is maybe a fraction of a percent of the stuff that I know now. So with that being said, what I'm asking you is, I mean, you were confident walking into that office that you knew how to do your stuff, but how much of that is what you know now?
Okay. The
Does that make
answer to the
sense?
last part of the question first is that, believe it or not, this is what I found out over the years. And I had the great pleasure of sharing that with Mike before he passed away. We remained friends all his life. And is that, believe it or not, I would say that he set the 80 plus rule, and that he gave me 80% of what I needed to get there. And I'm being very conservative in that. I think it really pushes it up more 85 to almost a high 80s. That's how good he did. He gave that's how valuable the foundation was. I was in shock when I opened up my business and started hiring, graduates. One of the guys was in school at Arizona State University, Paul, and brilliant guy. But how much Mike gave me was phenomenal. Now, the nuances, the last 10, 15% or whatever, is pretty awesome. But the foundation was laid. Now, the answer to the first part of the question is a powerful, important point, and I can't answer that one. And that is 90% of the time plus, no joke, when you're in business and you need to get projects out, Economics 101 takes over. And that's what they don't teach in architectural school, is economics.
Yep.
And what you need is the cheapest draftsman you can possibly get because you're barely paying yourself. Okay? And for a large firm, the principles don't go far from that Economics 101. You need people throwing down the lines. You know, and in today's world, since Revit has a corner on the market, unjustly, I might add, ahead of ArchiCAD, but I'm joking. But anyway, that if you have Revit skills, and that's the most important investment you can make in yourself, believe it or not. Maybe I'm overzealous on that one, but pretty close to it. And in school, and you come out being Revit proficient, you've got a job. Most of the jobs, no matter what they tell you and how beautiful the interview goes and all that, they need production. We would love to think, and sometimes schools, I think, make a huge mistake in this regard, that you're going to come out as an architect and you're going to get to design and do all these great things in design. No, my friend. I mean, they desperately need to get the drawings out, and they're behind. They're behind.
So I want to come back to that idea of being proficient in production when you get out of school, because I think that's one of the things that we'll kind of expound on. My friend, we've definitely gone from short answers to long answers in the first part of this format. So I'm going to go through these next few rapid fire questions, and let's just see. And because I knew this was going to be an issue having you as a guest, Jester, because you and I can talk 12 hours a day and have something new to talk about every single time. So I'm gonna go through some of these questions, and let's just do. It can be yes, no, quick sentences, and then we'll move on to, because I think we've had some pretty good long form questions. We'll maybe kind of expound on a couple of things that we went over in those first few questions, and then we'll move on to the first project that we're going to talk about. So, what do you do after graduation, or in your case, what do you do after you're ready to start your career?
I think that the answer really should be that it's what you should be doing in school, and that is forming a commitment to lifelong passion for knowledge, because really it's just the beginning. And if you got that, then you can do anything.
Perfect. How does one start their career into architecture and design?
How do they start it? This is the chicken and egg deal, in my opinion, because I think that it's not the common job. It's a creative. It's like asking an artist, how do you become an artist? Well, dude, it's somehow in your DNA. And you discover, no, I'm not a machinist. I'm a freaking artist. And so you discover who you really are, and then you accept it, and you go, man, I want to be the best that I can possibly be. In fact, I want to be shockingly good. I want to shock my mom and dad, and all the naysayers and the doubters. I want to rock.
Yep. So once you do that, once you commit to wanting to rock, how do you not get stuck just drawing all the time in the long run? And before you answer that question, I want to make this very clear, because you and I have a mutual friend who got stuck just drawing, right? Yeah. But he doesn't consider it as being stuck. He loves it. It's what he loves doing. Is he an architect? 100%.
Yeah.
Does he design buildings? that's an interesting question that I don't think we'll get into right now.
Right.
But
Right.
some people are afraid of getting out of school and just being stuck drawing. So let's make this a two-part question. One, is it bad to be stuck just drawing? Okay. Two,
No.
because this happens to every graduate. You get stuck, you get put in production. Not every graduate. You and I know some graduates who've been very fortunate being just put right into design. But if you're put into a production role, how do you get out of that if that's not what your passion in architecture is?
This is one of the reasons that Carl and I could talk.
And remember,
but it's going to be this long. At night, when you get home after the job, pretend you own the business. Do your own projects, do design, makeup stuff, and have a blast doing it. Dream big. Don't let anybody steal your dream. Nobody.
Great answer. All right. Let's see here.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
By the way, save those drawings. Put them in your portfolio. They're for show. Because otherwise, nobody's going to know you did it. But you got to be able to show it. Rock with it.
Yep. Dream projects. There's a couple of them here. Is there a movie set that you wish you would like to do the design for? One title. Pick it. Go.
I don't know. I'm going to have to pass on that one.
What about a musical set?
A musical set?
Yeah.
No, not either.
All right. We have to get a dream project something out of you for this question. So based on your wardrobe, let's say perfect studio location.
The perfect studio location, I think, is
for you.
For me, is 3 areas. A home studio, still love it. A place where you can have a business studio is fantastic because you got others hanging out with you, and it's fantastic. And then something mobile, and I love Starbucks or places like that where you can meet clients. Their own homes, their own offices are some of the best meetings you'll ever have.
Chester, you got to work with me here, man. I'm talking about your wardrobe.
Oh,
where are you going to retire to and do because when I say retire, right? When I say retire, I mean continue working, but in the luxury of where you want to work from. And looking at your shirt, and based on the picture that I found, what is it? Tahiti. Okay, there you go. Chester's going to be doing Tahitian global architecture from Tahiti. Now, this one I know you're not going to get, but it comes to us from Dennis over at the Architecture Discord. If you could design for any Warhammer faction, which one would it be?
Yeah, you're right. I don't get that.
Just make one up.
I don't know what war faction is. Sorry, you got to educate me on that one.
No, I'm not going to educate you. You just get to make something up. What's the name of the faction?
What faction? Oh, help me, Jesus. I don't know.
Based on the type of design that you do, what would be your perfect client? What would the name of their faction be? Do you think?
Wow. They'd probably be Arab. It'd be probably something. And my client would be Mahmoud Ben Saeed, my other self.
All right. Is there any architect or designer whose work you compare yours to?
No, and that was a great question because that's one of the things that I feel like I was really blessed with is a love of a lot of different styles. I can do them all. And I know that sounds just really egotistical, etc., but it's true. And it doesn't matter what style you pick, Normandy, it just doesn't. And I love contemporary, I love traditional, you name it, it becomes a beautiful opportunity.
Great answer. What do you drink for long night projects, day projects, or just any day? Favorite drink?
It's actually an energy drink. I usually pop an energy drink in the afternoon.
Fair enough. What are the 2 or 3 big influences which brought you to where you are today in your career?
Oh, wow. The first one was Stedletsky,
Ooh,
and
yeah.
can't remember his first name right now, but his last name was Stedletsky. And when I opened that magazine and I looked at that project, it was when I was near the end of my job with ML and Keener, and I go, that's what I want. That's what I want to do. That's it. That's me, and I can do that. And it was a contemporary cast in place concrete residence, and it was gorgeous. And John Lautner was another tremendous inspiration to me. And then that was the kickoff. That started this love affair with books. And there's no end to the inspiration. There's no end to the list, all the way up to the current incredible people like Big and Snoetta and Zaha but in the middle of that is Gaudi, and there's no end to the list. And if you got a passion for this thing, your list will be long.
Yep. If you could get any piece of weird furniture, designer, fancy furniture right now, what would it be?
Wow. I think I'd want to make it. I don't know whether, I don't know if there's anything that I want to buy anymore. It's more that I want to make it. Or at least
Interesting.
design it and have it made for me. I think that that's really what I want to do. I've started a collection on it, by the way.
So a Chester Ehrig special piece?
Yeah.
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 A DZYN.Studio custom piece of furniture?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Frank did it.
And that was all this question. That was it for rapid fire questions. Good job.
Wow.
I mean, we got
I
through.
I
think we got through the last 9 questions quicker than we did the first 2 questions. So, thank you, Dennis, Iskert, Sketchy, all of you who and DJR, which is also Dennis, from 2 different Discord servers: the Pigeon Head Architecture Discord server and the Architecture Discord server. And if you have any questions that you'd like to see to our audience to have asked of these architects and designers as they come on, feel free to check out those Discord servers or check out the questionnaire that is posted, I think, somewhere in the description that you can add questions to. So, Chester, moving on, do you want to answer a couple more long? Do you want to expound on some of the questions, or do you want to hop into a project? What do you think?
You got the clock in front of you. Oh, by the way, I want to say thank you to those guys too. I mean, thank you very much for the questions. I thought they were great and enjoyed them tremendously. And thanks for the opportunity to have a shot at them. They're great questions.
So this is a really interesting question, and I want to ask. There's someone who goes by the name YouMeet on YouTube who's watching, and he says, that being said, if I don't have that in my DNA, the question's formed, I won't make it in the field, ? And I think he's talking about that passion, that desire to go out and kind of make yourself a rock star that you were talking about. What do you think about that?
That's a great question. And you alluded to our friend. And the architectural profession is really a very, very special mixture of art and science. And there are a lot of pieces and parts to play in the profession that are available. Detailers, spec writers, uh, really, it's a huge list. I mean, I could go on, but and that can be a specialty where you can provide a service that is invaluable for your whole life, really. And as things are changing now, and new opportunities are coming in with AI and 3D and all the manufacturing, all the stuff that's going to affect architecture unbelievably. If you have math skills and can program, and you have a passion or an interest in architecture, wow, hallelujah. But I must caution you, whatever it is that you choose, if it's just a job, it's kind of like medicine, not necessarily a good choice to make, because this is a hard mistress, architecture is. So, and every job that we perform in life, no matter what it is, if it's just me taking my car down to the detailer, I want the detailer to be passionate about making cars beautiful and taking care of them. So passion, find the passion in whatever choice you make.
And I think that that's really important, because while there's certain, my belief is that there's certain parameters that make you an architect, it doesn't mean that you have to use all those parameters in to fulfill your passion. You don't have to love every single aspect of being an architect in order to be an architect. In reference to our drafting buddy, I think he has a passion for beautiful buildings, but I think more importantly, he has a passion for beautiful drawings, and that shows in his work.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's anyone else I would rather have produce drawings for me, even if it is by hand and scanned in, because I know that I can say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and he can say, okay, here's how you build it. But all he does is draw it.
Yeah.
So if it's not in your DNA to be passionate about architecture as a whole, but you have a passion for visual design, okay, then you're going to follow that visual design. So and the other way is, if you have a desire, like just a longing to be an architect, and you have to find what that means to you to be an architect. I have strong opinions about whether or not visual artists are architects if they don't understand how the building goes together. That's a different discussion. But that doesn't mean that you can't pursue that, because it's not being an architect. And then maybe there's a fork in the road. You have to decide, which one do I want to be? Do I want to be someone who creates awesome renderings for people? Or do I want to be someone who creates awesome buildings and spaces by the virtue of what an architect does? I mean, you can be an architect and still be a great visual designer, right? But finding that passion, I think, is what really... I think if you're passionate about something, you're going to find a way to build it into your DNA, to go out and find that. So there was one other question that I wanted to go ahead and get to real quick, that Sean has asked in the YouTube chat here. Thanks, Sean, for this question. And I think this is a very appropriate question. We don't have to spend too long on it. But what are your thoughts? Will this pandemic affect architecture, both in design and in the field?
That's going to be an ongoing conversation and dialogue. And sadly, I think that it's going to be predominantly diversionary. That's like saying that, the Spanish flu should change architecture. No. The thing that if we continue to focus our deal of solving problems and making life more beautiful and our buildings greener and healthier, then we are truly doing a great job. But one of the first things that's come up is for like restaurants. Restaurant design needs to be larger because that way you get the distancing. No, my friend, that's wrong. Period. End of sentence. Not only does the economics not work at all, okay, and it never will. No kidding. And that isn't a lot of times what you do when you go out and be social, to be able to be with friends, have a table full of guests, celebrate, etc. This is not social distancing or having little rooms, that we can all be separate with plexiglass deals between, whatever. No, the answer is in medicine and how we socially are responsible when we're sick or exposed to things.
And I don't think I could agree with you any more than I agree with you. And I think here's my fear is that in the academia world, and I've already seen it. All right, people who are taking distance learning courses in architecture, their studio projects are now design something for a post-pandemic world. So what does that even? So. And I can understand, okay, now we have to be creative in thinking about what does it mean to be in a post-pandemic world. But I feel like that's very forced. You're still designing for human beings, and human beings get sick, whether there's a pandemic or not. I'm sick right now, not with the pandemic, but with my annual allergies and sinus congestion. Right. Does that need to change architecture? I don't know. I don't think so. But you know what's interesting? As big as this pandemic is, you know what is going to change architecture? The next disability that a minority of people have.
Amen.
That causes them to not be able to enjoy public functions. Is that fair? I just had this discussion with my 10-year-old son. And that's the part of the compassion and empathy of being an architect. Someone asked me the other day, if you don't have empathy, can you be an architect? What do you think?
There's still architecture done in the world by unempathetic people that is outstanding. So it's hard to say that there's these hard lines,
So I don't know. I think, Sean, to answer your question, I don't think that I don't know. Yes or no? Do you think the pandemic will affect architecture?
It will for a very short period of time, and it'll be very, very short-lived because the economics can't handle it. And economics is ruling architecture, most architecture, anyway.
Yeah, and I agree.
It's not gonna happen.
I'm going to put a little twist on that answer. I'm going to say it will affect architecture. I don't think it should.
Right.
I think maybe there's going to be some. I think what it will affect. Okay, I'm going to backtrack on my answer.
I love you.
I think it will affect architecture in the sense that what's going to be more common now? Distance learning classrooms.
Yeah.
Co-working spaces. Where instead of working out of your home, you need to have a place a professional environment to surround yourself in order to have virtual meetings. Right. So I think in the sense of planning for spaces that have functions that are now more pronounced because of the pandemic, we'll see those changes in architecture. Right. Is that fair? I think that's fair.
Yep. I wanted to do a little tag on here.
Sure.
In short, is that we are on the cusp. So near being able to have drugs designed specifically for us because of our DNA. And being able to take drug strains and modify them instantly based on our own personal DNA. We're going to find that medicine is going to take the most interesting and exciting journey that it's ever taken and solving these problems. And they're the place where these problems should be solved. It isn't architecture that started the problem, and architecture can't address all issues. and even though we'd love it to, uh, but great healthy lifestyle and smart social behavior um, is where we need to put that and have confidence in that layer of expertise to do the magic. And we're getting there fast.
Yep. Yep. All right. Well, Chester, we're 50 minutes into this thing and we haven't even started to talk about projects. You want to talk about a project?
Sure.
Let me. The first project that we're going to talk about is the Oru Student Center. And while I'm getting my screen share stuff up, unfortunately I don't know that I'll be able. I'm going to try to screen share with you. I don't know that it'll work. But you're unfortunately going to have to look at you and my screen at the same time if I do that. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. They can't. You can. But while I'm going here, two questions. First, is it okay if I show this video? Do you want to start with this video and then we can kind of go through the process?
Sure.
What do you think?
That's fantastic.
So if you could talk about the project just a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my screen set up in terms of being able to show this properly. And
okay.
And then you just talk about this Oru Student Center real quick.
Okay. This was a project where David Short of KSQ, that's when we were at KSQ together, came up to me at the end of the week and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, but to bring this on to you so late, but we might have a project here if you're interested in doing it." And it was a new student center on the campus of ORU. And I said, yes, would. And the reason is that I thought that it would be an extremely exciting project, and it was. And the ORU campus, as we'll see, is a very unusual campus. It's like no other campus in the nation, it's like a campus that was designed for the Jetsons. It was by Oral Roberts, and the huge TV evangelist, and he had the idea of building a modern and in the future university for Christians. And so what we're going to see here shortly is the finished product being debuted by the students, and a local brilliant marketing guy named Stuart McDaniels of Guru Stew did this presentation, and we worked in collaboration on that, and it was phenomenal. But what I want you to see in the end, not only the fun, but the student comments. And that's what you live for. The users' comments. How do they feel? How does what you've done do something for them? And that's what you're going to see here in this.
So, I'm probably, just for the sake of not knowing if there's copyrighted music in the video, I'm probably not going to play the audio, but I think this video is on YouTube right. Somewhere.
It's not, it's all right. It's not copyrighted. That way you can get to hear it, and it's all public.
Let's see.
That show's so legit. I was so proud. It's so cool. You know, we're maybe a Christian college, but we're more than able to show the world that we have something unique, and that we're smart, and that we can engineer new things.
All right. So, that being said, I'm going to stop the video there. So let's talk about how this design came about. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with some site photos or some sketches?
Yeah,
How do you
let's do that.
how do you want to do
The
this?
site map, because that's kind of where you start.
So the
And this
site,
is,
you want to do the site map?
yeah, the
Okay.
site map.
Where can I find that one? Is that
That's like near the end of that series there.
is it in this series?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay, let's see here. So I've got South Site. I think these are all photos. This is the Axis Photos
Yeah,
folder.
there's in that group, there's a Google shot.
Oh, this one right here.
There it is. There it is. Okay. This is the blue circle in your lower left there with the kind of star-shaped design around it.
Yep.
That's the prayer tower. And there's a sunken garden that surrounds the prayer tower.
Yep.
You actually go down steps into this garden area. To the west, that's the left of the tower, is the chapel. So you have the chapel, then you have the prayer tower. Then to the immediate east of this site, on that axis, you have this bare piece of ground. That's where they wanted the building, and it was a great position for it. And then immediately to the east of that is the pond. And can't remember the name of that pond, but it's going to come up here. And to the north, you're going to see some high-rise buildings up to circular ones. Those are 8 and 12-story res halls. The triangular propeller-shaped one is a 7-story res hall. And the one immediately south, the angular spaceship, they call it, on the south there, that's a diamond, really. You're only seeing half of it.
Yep.
Is probably 80% of the academic studies are in that building. So the original planners had this vision of a garden campus with high-rise pieces, mid-rise pieces in it. And it gave a lot of land, it kept a lot of land open, and it was brilliant. But you had this access between the chapel. Remember, this is Christian college. So you got the chapel, you got prayer, you got student services, and you got nature. And so the idea was, well, let's accentuate this axis, stay on axis. And you've got the worship, you have the prayer, you have student life, and you have nature. Keep them in line. From the prayer tower, the building would not interrupt the view of the fountain and nature, and the building would open up to the sky, to the prayer tower. You could be up in the prayer tower and look down into the student union. You could see each other. And so there was this openness, this idea of transparency in the design that we wanted to do.
And I think I have the site studies PDF. I can actually bring that up. Let's take a look at that. How you're talking about looking down into.
That would be terrific.
Let's see if I can get this pulled up
The
here.
sketches, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
These guys right here.
This is what won us the job.
Yeah, and I saw that folder name, and so I should probably address the fact you and I worked on this project together. This was my first project working with you, and at the time I didn't even work for the company that was doing the job. I was on loan from another company. And so my first introduction to Chester was, I've got this, and I'm a Revit person, he comes up and he says, I've got this SketchUp model. And immediately I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go. One of these guys. And you're like, the roof is double sloped. I was like, okay. And essentially we were having trouble getting that design to translate into a model. So that was how I was introduced to this project. How I was introduced to Chester was through this project, actually. And can I just say that I've worked on 2 once-in-a-lifetime projects, and this is one of them, in my opinion. I think that not many architects get to work on projects of this caliber, or of this excitement level. There was a lot of hype around this project, and we'll come back to why there was so much hype later on. But so this is essentially what you were talking about right here. So
Right.
this is the axis that you're talking about in section. So you've got your chapel on the left side here. Here's the fountain, Lake Evelyn, with the fountain, and so this is what you're talking about, being up in the prayer tower, which has the ever burning gas light up here, which does stay on in the middle of it does stay on in the middle of tornadoes. We did find that out. But you can look down into this. So talk a little bit about this sketch and why this sketch is in a PDF that resides in a folder called What Won Us the Project.
Remember, there's like a tremendously short period of time, and there were some questions I think earlier that alluded to this issue. Is if you have a great foundation in problem solving, it will come to serve you, and sometimes when you need it the most. When you have no time and something, you have a great opportunity. So went out to the site, and all that teaching, all that mentorship comes to you instantly. And you go, okay, what does the site say? We went up into the prayer tower and looked over it, down on the site. And it came to me that, this building should not be an interruption. And it should be something that respects the site and respects the values that the campus believes in and offers us their students. And so that was the reason for the shape of the roof. And the walls canted out at 7 degrees. Remember that, Carl?
Oh yeah.
And on this shot right in here, the left side, which was the northwest side, is the tallest, and the southwest was the shortest height. So it went from corner to corner, and the roof slope did, monolithically. And then you had all the walls that canted it. And so it presented a great challenge. And here this guy comes to our office, and his name is Carl. And I would not know that he was a gift from above, man. And that we would end up doing this together and having an incredible time and becoming incredible friends. But the thing that won was that when the chancellor at that time, Dr. Rutland, was presented with this, that section made all the difference. He saw how that student life, something that Oral Roberts himself was very, very concerned about, would be respectful to the religious values that they had, and that they'd be all tied together. And he saw the line, he saw how the things, the relationships, and fell in love with that. It was instant buy-in. And the second part of it was the views that Carl was showing you of it, the amount of glass in it, the transparency. And that had become an issue on the campus.
Why, Chester? Why is that a challenge on this campus?
Well,
how do you explain
notorious?
How do you explain pre-Arm & Hammer Student Center buildings on ORU's campus?
Yeah. But they had run into severe financial difficulty, and it had happened in the dark. And so the idea was be transparent, be transparent. And that really literally changed the campus. Dr. Rutland's work there was phenomenal, and he was an incredible, incredible client. You could not have asked for a better client. It's a dream client. And let's see.
It's a lot of glass. It really is.
Yeah, there were three requirements that Dr. Rutland gave us, and one caveat. And it was that the building was supposed to be designed for fun, food, and fellowship. And the caveat was no more gold glass. So, and to respect the architecture on the campus.
And to understand what we mean by no more gold glass, just go to Google Maps, look up Oru Roberts University, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and do a street maps view of whatever you can around the campus, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about. Every building looks like it's from the Jetsons, and every building, with the exception of the Student Center, is glazed with gold reflective glass. From the outside of the buildings, you cannot see inside. It's, as you're driving by, it's just a gold reflection of everything that's outside, back at you. So this was a breakthrough project for ORU.
Yeah, it was. It was the first one that they'd had in about 30 years. So, I mean, it was pretty phenomenal. It was done on time and in budget.
Yep.
Which was pretty awesome. By the way, Carl, they just changed the glass in the chapel to blue.
Ooh,
so
I'll have to go by and see that.
Their blue is now in.
Yeah. I'll have to go.
I have to give David credit for that. The only thing, after he saw my sketches, he came to my table. He goes, He goes like this. And then he goes, make the glass a little bluer, would you? So that's good. Make the glass a little bluer. So we have to give credit where credit is due. And David, that was his a gift to the project.
Nice. So let's see. We've got a couple of photos of the finished building. You wanna go through those?
Yeah.
Let's pull those up real quick. And I'm just gonna kind of scroll through these. So here we go. And I believe these were taken by our friend Melissa, weren't they? Were these taken by Melissa?
Yes, they were. Yes, they were.
Yeah.
Melissa Lukenbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a great photographer. That first picture right there is, this one here is facing the prayer tower. It's the front of the building facing the prayer tower. And the projections on that left-hand side there are areas of rooms on the inside that project outward, cantilever, and looking north toward all the student res hall and student dining. And that lower floor looks out toward the garden, the sunken garden of the prayer tower. Prayer tower. And the outside of the building is clad in white porcelain tile, which was really nice. Front desk when you enter, and the interior design team, which was Shannon Meyer, and man, I've just forgotten her name. Man, that's bad. You're gonna have to help me on that one. The two of them did a spectacular job. Everybody raves about it. Just everybody.
I just realized that I'm muted. So it's Jenna, right?
Jen.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep. So let's talk about this TV. Is it still the largest high-definition TV in Oklahoma?
I don't know.
Because at the time it was.
Yeah.
But this was a really interesting part of the design, because can you talk a little bit about how this came up and why this kind of this became such a large part of the project here?
Well, it was actually it was part of the design programming meetings with Dr. Rutland, and he wanted an area that would where people could study and hang out together. And on the outside, you see this L-shaped table, which was like a bar, and with plugins the whole length of it, so you could plug in your devices and hang out. And you could also have something from the snacks and the area behind you to eat there as well. And then down below that, into the in that area, are these modular furniture that you just kind of crawl up into and on and all over the place. And you got these lounge areas, lounge chairs that you can hang out. And it was for watching sports, playing games, listening to maybe some important talks or lectures. And you could see it from the whole area behind you. For over half of the facility downstairs, you can see this area. And it's kind of the part of the central core of the building.
Yeah, this is a major part of the project. I mean, you can see it from everywhere. And there's a whole ton left in this building. Is there anything that
into it? Yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to? So this is from the study room, which is
the living room. They call it the living room.
Yeah, it's not quite sound isolated, but it is definitely a drop in decibel volume from this room to just on the other side of it. Was there anything else that you wanted to look at?
That area. You can
right
see
here.
Into that screened area all the way to the outside.
Yep.
Lake Evelyn.
Yep. Is there anything else that you wanted to look at in this project before we moved on?
No, I was profoundly. I can't say enough about the client, because the ability to do great architecture, the opportunity to do great architecture, and to do your dreams and to get tested, to do what you may have never done before, is because of your client. It's not because of you that can do it. There's many things you'll be able to do that you'll maybe never get to do. But it's finding the client, and a client that believes in you, and there's a development of trust and excitement that they are kind of in their own way saying, show me what you've got, help us. And so Dr. Rutland, can't ever thank you enough.
So there are two things while we're still on this project, and this is going to kind of lead into answering a couple of the questions that we have. How did you find the inspiration for the design for this project? What would you say your process was for this? And is that the same process that you use on every project? I know we looked at some of those sections and some of those the site photos, and you explained what the concept was, but what is your process for getting to that point?
I think that if you wanted to, the best possible resource that I can recommend is a book called Idea Work, and it's on my desk. I keep it around. Here it is, Idea Work, and it discusses the design process that I've come to, and it's really built off of a library, an incredible library that I've had the privilege of building, and studying and being mentored by some of the greats and the lesser known greats. And when that soaks into your mind, it soaks into your heart, and you find your own expression for it, and it comes to you, and it's because you fell in love with it. And I think for the bottom line, that's what it's all about, is falling in love with what you do. And when you do that, it comes back. And it comes back in sometimes the most wonderful and surprising ways. It really does. And like the 3D video on the outside and all of that, that was a dream. And that's a story in its own right for someday, later maybe. But it's a magical story.
So you've used this word dream a couple times in this story about ORU, and you talked about this being a dream client, which, I don't know, would you say every architect and designer gets a chance to work with a dream client?
No. And I think that there are sometimes an opportunity or two, but I think it's oftentimes a little rarer than we'd love it to be. And I think that that's part of our challenge as architects, is that we've not been taught or understood how to grow those clients and how to find them, and let alone how to treat them. And I think that if there was any area that we could invest time in helping one another on, it would be probably that.
Relationships.
Yeah. And being able to discover each other, being able to serve one another, and to have something to give. There's an old idiom that says, you cannot give what you do not have. If I ask you for a pencil and you have none, how do you give me one? And so we need to be what we're supposed to be so that we can give magnificently and generously and in abundance.
Yeah,
but we also need to find each other. We need to find each other.
Yeah, I think every architect in their career will have a best client, but not a dream client. And I don't know, would you agree that you can make a dream client out of a not dream client by building that relationship?
Yeah.
I think 100%. And I think I think some of the best clients that I've had are ones that allowed me to build a relationship with them. And this is another interesting thought to put into students, especially new graduates. And this leads into a whole nother topic, but can a studio be a dream client for an individual?
Yes.
I think 100%.
Yep.
And I think that's one thing that I started learning around the time that I was transitioning from Synergy to KSQ, was that you really have to start treating those companies that you work for as clients. Because when you start doing that, not only does it start preparing you to be an entrepreneur, but you also start looking at things from a slightly different perspective. They're not your boss. They're not your employer. They're somebody that you're in a partnership with to grow your career. And if you look at them as a boss and employer, you're going to find yourself stuck, right? Because you have to do what you're told. Yeah. But a lot of times an employer can come across as a boss, not intentionally, but because you're just doing what you're told to do. And I'm not telling people to stop doing what you're told to do. Okay? You got to get your work done at the end of the day. But if you take the time to develop those relationships and find a mentor, someone who and this does require you admitting you don't know everything about architecture. If you go into it thinking that you know everything and that what you say has to go, then you're going to have a hard time finding a dream client. Agree? Disagree?
Yep. Absolutely. Well said.
So
Very well said.
I think that building a relationship thing is so important. Um, so speaking of building relationships, you and I have built a relationship over the past, what is it? I guess it's 7 years, 8 years now. Yeah. I think
Yeah,
I started at KSQ in 2012.
yeah.
So 8 years now. And even though neither of us work with KSQ anymore, we actually were able to come back together and collaborate on a couple projects. You want to take a look at those?
Yep.
How are you doing
This
on
is
time?
good.
We're about an hour and 15 minutes into this thing. I've been checking on the status of the stream.
Yeah.
The stream is shot. Like it's like 30 minutes behind us because my internet connection's so bad. But I am recording it, so I will be able to put this up and we'll chop it up and we'll put in the great points later on. I think people who join us now will be like caught up, but people who joined us at the beginning are like 30 minutes behind us. So if you're good on time, I'm good on time.
Yeah.
I'm low on hot chocolate, but it's cold now, so it's now just chocolate milk. It is room temperature chocolate milk, which is interesting. So let's talk about a couple projects that you and I have collaborated on, and this will be a little bit shorter. We'll just go through a couple things about these projects. But the first one I want to talk about is one that you came in and helped us with at Delineations, and this was the Bixby Chamber of Commerce project. Now, this is the building that we started with right here. When you saw this building, if this is the building you start with, where do you even begin trying to be inspired to make a design for this? You know what I'm asking, right? Because there is nothing inspiring about this at all, except that it needs to change. This needs to change, and I am inspired by that. You can check off dog barking from the live stream bingo card.
That's it. This is a great real life project that is great for architectural students to look at and hear what we're talking about. But it's also an ongoing opportunity for people that do have a practice or are at a job where, that are working with big boxes, and this is a big box store. And what do you do to continue to give it life, and give it a second life, and maybe a second life that's even better than the first life. And so you start looking at, what can I do with a box? And that's a whole study in itself. And I have an ongoing study that I do and have done for years on what do you do with boxes? What can you do with boxes? And it's limitless. So
Yeah.
When you brought it up and we sat down together, I was excited because this is a box.
So I'm not going
to play with it.
I'm not going to go through the interior layout and stuff like that, because you and I mostly collaborated on we collaborated a little bit on some of the function and program. In fact, maybe do I have well, let's talk about these elevations first, because despite the exterior being somewhat blah and very much a form that we didn't want the end product to be, you still pulled some inspiration off of that front elevation in some of these concepts.
Yeah.
Still keeping this look right here like this. So if you can recall, I know this was longer than yesterday ago, what were some of the things, what did that session look like in terms of getting to the point where we had something where we could present? And well, now I'll come back to the second part of that later on.
if I remember correctly, we were both sketching together, opposite sides of the table, and I started with the centerpiece of the existing uh, building, and it reminded me of um, mid-century modern and the simplicity of lines. And what would you do if you brought more light into the space? Well, with the user, that kind of light would be tremendous. And you couldn't flood the place with enough light. And so, well, what if we did open it up and provided clear story glass on that right-hand side there, and then tall glazing in the middle? It just seemed to naturally lend itself to that. You could take the outside surfaces and with minor modification, update them and give them a brand new life. And it would be a totally different building with a completely different spirit to it.
Yep. And I think it's important to note also to anyone who's looking at, what this conceptual design process looks like. These are all sketched on trash paper.
Yeah.
This is we processed the photos later for the presentation to the client, but this is all on trash paper. So I don't know. I think a lot of students now are of the mindset, and I'm of the mindset that maybe you can do this in a digital way, but I think for you and I, especially for this project, just having a roll of trash paper that you can just rip, draw.
Yep.
It was just the ability to get something down and have these ideas just kind of flow out was, I think, really instrument in getting to, we had a couple of different, so we had this concept also, which was a little bit, squarish, the idea of the facade with the sloped roof behind it, still getting the glass in. And then, was this an earlier sketch? Was this?
I think that was
early
the first sketch.
Yeah, the first,
this.
and then it developed into this a little bit more refined.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and playing around with the idea of, well, what happens if it's more solid and more transparent, things like that.
Right.
And I think we took that, and I think that's what that came from right there.
Right. I agree.
And then we talked about this elevation here, and it's a little weird for us to talk about the elevation before we talk about why this elevation is this way, but we're going to start with this elevation because that's where we've started this discussion. And we opted to do this from that peaked mid-century concept with that idea of the clerestory glass kind of wrapping the entire structure here. So, and I think this one was one that I did that kind of played on the idea that of that peaked kind of low-slung international style look, with the idea that we knew that there was going to be a co-working space on this street facing over here. So you start to see things like the Chamber of Commerce logo, entries that indicate people are biking to work, a co-working kind of sitting area here. Oh, you can't see my screen, I just realized. Oh, you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Hey, look at that. And then this idea of like this party deck out here. That the client was just jokingly talking about, but I was thinking, why can't that be a reality? And you always start with this question of what if. So I'm going to see if I can get to these site images here, or not. Okay. So this was kind of where we started. We've got our site here, and we had some other nodes downtown that created these pathways here. And essentially what happened is we took this Chamber of Commerce building, and what did it become? through the process of us kind of sitting and just having a jam session. This is an architectural jam session that we really had, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are always fun. You look forward to those in a project. So what do you remember that what became of this? Like in terms of like we started out as, okay, we need a public physical building for Chamber of Commerce. What else does the Chamber of Commerce mean to the city of Bixby? And that just kind of turned into this. Do you remember kind of some of the things that happened with this?
Yeah, it was taking that, the Dollar Tree or whatever it was, as taking that centerpiece and creating an east-west pedestrian tree-lined event, through the parking lot, and changing the parking lot so that there's more vegetation in it, trees, and really making it a pleasant place to park, and just instead of a sea of asphalt out there. You and I talked about that and what happens when you come into the place. How do you feel orientated? What's in the big blue area there that's hatched in the middle? And the south side, if I remember right, was off of an alleyway. So that would be a more walled section where windows out there would be limited to high clear story.
Yeah, there's a building. You talking about this street side here or the alley back here?
The east-west kind of alleyway.
Yeah.
The true alley is the north-south one in the back.
Oh,
with
yeah,
all the utilities and crap.
Yeah,
but,
so this is actually like grease traps and stuff from a restaurant back here down in this alley. So how do you make this a path that people want to traverse when you've got grease traps and trash bins and things like that all out the back?
Right. So I mean, you gotta figure out how is there a landscaping opportunity? That's what the trees, indicate. What kind of an environment on the wall do you provide where people don't mind walking past it? Getting it through.
And these are all things that we propose in the vacuum of nobody else there to agree with us.
Right.
Or disagree with us. More importantly, that they can't disagree with us, because you asked a very important question when we started this, and it's a question that you start most of your projects with, which is what?
You say it.
What if?
Yeah, what if?
What if this wasn't an alley? What if this is, excuse me, something where the artists in Bixby come to celebrate their passion, and then the people who appreciate art now have a place where they can walk through from. There's a prominent food truck company that has an office right over here, and it's a barbecue food truck. And he often, the idea is, okay, let's have them park here next to the party deck, and then we can make this side of the building. It's a safe pedestrian alley. Walking down to, there's a Charles Page Park, I think it's Charlie Page Park down here in downtown Bixby, and then there's shops and vending right here. There's another parking lot here, and that was property that we can't really touch, but we use the opportunity of the building in the alley to create a pathway that actually connects the rest of downtown into uses this building to connect two parts of downtown Bixby, which I thought was a great idea. And I this unfortunately was one of those clients that you never really hear back from, so you don't know if it was your ideas or the budget. But this was a fun project to collaborate on, even if it was very short-lived. Because you can take some of these ideas and reuse them. This is how you develop your ideas. You just have these jam sessions, and you keep your drawings, right?
Amen.
Always keep your drawings, because you never know when you're going to come back and do this. Or you can use some of this stuff. This project hasn't been built. It might come back. In fact, what's really funny, I don't know if I told you this, I got contacted by another client in downtown Bixby, who's renovating. It's a very large client in downtown Bixby, who is building a new headquarters. And one of the functions that they wanted in that space was public space for the Bixby Chamber of Commerce to use. So,
wow. This is great.
So who knows? It could come back all the way around, and we end up doing the project through another client. So you never know when some of this stuff comes around. So what's really interesting about this art crawl, this art walk that's in here, is you had the same concept in another project that you and I collaborated on.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. That was the old Itasco building in downtown Tulsa. And it was...
and I think I'm going to start with some of the pictures of the original building. I'm going to pull some of those up real quick.
Yeah. Memories.
Uh-huh. Now, I came in on this project pretty late. You already had a really good concept of what was going to go on in this project by the time I came in. And my capacity was essentially providing construction documents for your client. And taking your concepts and making them permittable to say, I guess. But man, this is another building where how do you draw inspiration from it in its existing condition?
Right. It really does. I don't think I can ever emphasize it enough. Is that kind of where we started in the beginning of our conversation, and it's been kind of a hallmark between us, and that is passion. Passion is a very interesting thing because it's like the tide. It comes and goes, and there's a beauty in both phases, the come and the go. But if you're passionate about our deal about architecture, then it's your library. And where do you seek your inspiration from? And when you need it, like on a building like this, you need it. And some, like the Bixby project, you need a lot of it. And you need it to be really creative. And for any of you that are listening to this, one of my favorite creatives that I still draw inspiration from all the time is Samuel Mockbee, and he's passed away. And John Freer has taken that studio and continued it.
I took classes from one of his students, one of Sam Mockbee's students. So I was very fortunate to have kind of like that second link connection to Sambo. And I can't stress enough to go look up the work of the Rural Workshop. It's Rural Workshop, right? Pretty sure that's what it's called. Out of Auburn. Is it Auburn University?
Yeah. In Alabama.
Yep.
And Samuel Mockbee had this dream. He was going to practice architecture in the poorest county in Alabama. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. None. Zero. He ends up doing amazing work and with nothing.
It really is.
And inspiring everyone that even comes around and bringing life back to a community that had never had much hope to begin with. And whatever they had was lost. And it was no money.
Yeah, go ahead. So I think this is something that I want this series to kind of focus on, because how many people who are going to watch this? Let's assume a vast majority of the architectural industry watches this video globally. I know that's a stretch goal for me.
That's a big dream.
But let's assume that. How many of those people, percentage-wise, do you think have ever heard of Samuel Mockbee?
Very few. Very, very, very few. Maybe 3-4%. Maybe. Would you call him a starchitect? Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
100%.
There's no question about it, because his dream, again, the dream, was so magnificent that he wanted to challenge all of us. And I really believe that. When you listen to his videos and you listen and see what he did and what the legacy that he's left, that even when you have nothing, you can do great architecture. And some of the greatest work, his clientele were poor. They're not the rich. They were poor. And